Funny, kind, athletic, artistic, intelligent. What do all of these words have in common? They are labels. By this, I mean that these mere words are used to describe all that a person is. Every day, the people around you label you with a few adjectives or a short phrase to remember you by, and you do the same to others. Some labels are positive, while others are negative. Right now, with every word that I say and every action that I take, you are labeling me. As frustrating as this practice may seem, it's not only common, but also inevitable. But I'll go into the scientific reasoning behind it later. Hi, for those of you who don't know me, my name's Taylor Hodan, and I'm this year's academics prefect. Today, I'll be talking about my own experiences with these labels and how to handle the labels that others put on you. But first, I have a question for you. When others describe you, are there any adjectives that you hope people use? Funny, kind, athletic, artistic, intelligent? Well, for most of my life, I had one adjective in particular that I hoped others would use. It differed from the conventional, intelligent, artistic, or even athletic. Rather, it was mature. I know that this seems like an odd choice. Trust me, it took me a long time to understand why I wanted to be called this for so long. But I eventually realized that the root cause behind this was my family. Specifically, being an only child and the youngest in my extended family, both of which has its perks, especially being the youngest, as I have a seemingly infinite supply of people to turn to for advice that have already been through what I'm currently going through. But it also has its downfalls. Everyone always seems 30 steps ahead of me, getting married and having kids, yet I was still in high school. It felt like I was in a race to catch up to where they were in their lives. The only issue was that I began this race a few decades later. I somehow convinced myself that acting more mature would not only help me achieve this, but would also let me better relate to my family. For years, I struggled to connect with them, as I rarely understood what they were going through. While I worried about an upcoming test or an assignment, they worried about securing their dream job or placing the perfect offer on a new house. All things that I still get to worry about later, which is great. So, 8-year-old me had the bright idea to close this gap by acting more mature. To me, this meant abandoning stuffed animals and trading in children's TV shows for documentaries, as I somehow believed that that made all the difference when it came to being childish versus being mature. I also thought that acting mature meant sounding more academic, which meant researching what I had considered fancy topics at the time, that ranged from the stock market to the trends in the corporate world. Although many people who know me well would still consider me the mature one in the friend group, and although I've acquired many new labels throughout my life, I've learned to not center my behavior around shaping them into something that I want. However, despite my efforts to distance myself from these labels, I soon found myself presented with an entirely new set of them here at Appleby. Boarder versus day student, upper school versus senior school, Bailey versus Walker. Even in our signature lines, we label ourselves with the titles of all of the positions we hold, our VIA character strengths and our core strengths, that relate us to a single color or a combination of them. This year especially, I found myself constantly surrounded by these labels because of university applications. For those of you in S2, you've likely familiarized yourselves with the describe yourself in 3 words and the what characteristic best describes you questions that force you to label yourself with a mere word or 2. And for those of you in S1, be ready to see these questions pop up literally everywhere next year. So, if this practice seems so inherently bad, why is it that we do it? Why do we continue this seemingly infuriating practice of labeling others? To answer this, I had to, of course, conduct research on the topic and found that this can largely be attributed to the dual system theory. According to Dr. Marcus Schlosser, assistant professor of philosophy at the University College Dublin, it states that we all have a combination of both determinable thoughts and actions, as well as unintentional reactive action. Essentially, the structuring holds that System 2, our instinct-based system of thought, often overpowers that of System 1, our interpretive and intentional system of thought. However, we often don't hold any conscious ill will against the person being judged. Rather, it's just that we're being impacted by the trained bias of our own System 2. For being such complex creatures that manage to continually innovate with our seemingly limitless ingenuity, we somehow fail to overcome as simple an obstacle as inherent bias. However, despite this shortcoming, we can still control how we perceive the labels that others associate with us. As cliché as this may sound, the key is to just be yourself. Act in the way that's most natural to you. Follow whichever passions you want through your courses, co-curriculars, or clubs. And don't worry about fulfilling the expectations that others have of you. And most importantly, embrace what American poet Walt Whitman says, quote, "I contain multitudes," end quote. We are more than the sum of our parts, and we are more than the labels we receive. Others will always have an opinion about you. That is inevitable. So there's really no point in trying to manipulate these views in a way that best suits your own personal desires. By simply being yourself, others may even associate you with the words that you associate with yourself. It's such a simple and efficient solution to a complex problem, which, according to economists like Mr. Grant, is the best type of solution. However, I understand that this will be difficult at times, as it means that you will have to adjust your own behavior and worries. Maybe you're especially concerned about putting your best self forward for university applications if you're in S2, or for leadership positions if you're in S1. Although it may seem right to put up a facade in the short run, it will be detrimental in the long run, because not only does this mean that you will have to constantly inspect your own behavior, but you would also lose sight of who you are along the way, forgetting the elements that make you, you. And if I'm being entirely honest, being who you truly are is what makes you interesting and different from the billions of other people. In summary, it will be hard to distance yourself from these labels at times. But just remember that they're inevitable, as they're part of our human nature. So don't waste your energy in trying to shape them into something that you want. And finally, if you're ever struggling with this, just know that you are and will always be more than your labels. You will be mature if you want to be. You will be funny, kind, athletic, artistic, intelligent, and whatever else that you want to be. You will always contain multitudes. Now, will you please rise and pretend to sing "She Comes Sailing on the Wind"?